It seems like it's been 40 weeks since you got 40 winks. Your back pain? Unbearable. Tossing, turning, trying to find that pain-free position. And that's the moment you realize you can't spend another waking moment putting off treatment.
The Joint and Spine Center is Cincinnati's leading destination for spine care, with a ton of surgical and non-surgical treatments for back pain. So when a moment has the power to change the rest of your life, go to the one place with the power to change it for the better, the Christ Hospital Health Network. This changes everything.
The Pound This Podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This Podcast, episode 658, How My Weight Loss Journey Completely Changed My Life.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This Podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This Podcast. I am Amanda Valentine, and let's talk all about me. But seriously, this podcast is about me and my story. And the reason why I'm doing this episode is I know there's new listeners all the time. If you are new here, oh my gosh, thank you so much for listening to my podcast. So I wanted to give a full backstory because I know it becomes in bits and pieces on episodes. And I've done episodes before talking about how I got started in my weight loss journey. So I kind of wanted to go over that again. So if you've heard that story before, you're probably going to hear a lot of repeated information. But, you know, losing weight and having a healthier lifestyle has literally changed my life in ways I could have never imagined, where I'm sitting in this very moment recording this podcast. So I kind of wanted to do a little timeline action and talk about how I got started. And I specifically got a question today asking me how I don't give up and cover things like that. So let's start from the very beginning, which is at the time I think that I realized that, you know, I was overweight. And as I'm going to put myself around 6 years old, pretty young, and I know I was kind of wearing adult sizes. And I really knew that that I guess that where I felt uncomfortable in my body or the size I was, because that's, you know, the age where you go to school and kids start to point that out. And that's just usually how it goes, you know? So I'd say a lot of self-conscious thoughts, a lot of shame. I think shame is a great way to describe definitely a lot of my childhood and going into adulthood too. So for me, not only kind of being the overweight kid, I was also and so I grew up in a really small town at the time, 2,700 people. And I'm with the same group of 60 kids through 8th grade, and then go to another town, which is about 20 minutes away, to go to high school. And so, especially like in my small town, like not only was I one of the bigger girls in class, I also had big Coke bottle glasses and jacked up teeth until I got braces, which I wore for 4 years. And I also was in the trailer park kid. So there was a lot of targets for kids to make fun of and stuff like that. So yeah, I knew that I just didn't feel comfortable in my own body. I just wasn't a cheerleader like some of my friends were, and I wasn't into sports. And there's just a lot of shame around my body. And even the one sport I played briefly, I played volleyball in 6th grade because my mom wanted me to play, because my cousin had played volleyball and lost weight. And so she wanted me to play volleyball so I would lose weight. And just having the mind in there of like, I'm here because I'm fat, not because I'm wanted to be here. I'm really enjoying it. I quit after a couple months. I really sucked at it too. I was not very coordinated with sports. But I was always in band. So I started playing my saxophone in 3rd grade, and I played that through senior year in high school. So speaking of sports and stuff like that, on purpose, for my high school years, I took extra band classes so I would never have to step foot in the gym. And not only because I just did not enjoy physical activity at the time, but also, you know, going to PE up through 8th grade, that I was so ashamed of my body that I didn't want to undress in front of everybody else. So I would go into the bathroom stall, and I was pretty much the only one that did that, which also made me a target. So it's like undress in front of everyone and get made fun of, or dress in the bathroom stall and get made fun of. And I chose get dressed in the bathroom stall. So from feelings like that, and also and I will say too, my PE teachers sucked. I mean, it's the 90s. You can get away with a lot more stuff then, I guess, than you can now. But I'm like, if these PE teachers pulled what they did in the 90s now, they would have been so freaking fired. Like, I got a concussion and they didn't even care. I busted my knee open once and they didn't even care. Like, it was pretty, I was not favorited. I was not on the softball team or anything like that. And it was very obvious that they enjoyed the kids that played sports. So because I had such a bad taste in my mouth over that, I'm like, in high school, I'm like, I had no desire to go to gym. So I took like a music theory class, and I don't even remember what other band classes I had. I even took a half a lunch instead of a full lunch when I was able to, just so I could take band classes. So that got me out of PE. And I also got out of study hall. For some reason, I didn't want to be in study hall either. I don't know. My mind's a weird place. So, I mean, I didn't know anything about food or nutrition. That was nothing I had growing up. Food that we got from the church, like some government cheese sort of action. It was eating food for comfort. There's a lot of things that I'm not going to go into in this podcast, which I would like to discuss in the future, though, of kind of where some of my food issues and everything comes from. But basically, I mean, I was eating whole boxes of au gratin potatoes and multiple cans of chili with multiple bags of cheese in them. And like, I ate so much country crock as a kid. Like, I just ate all of this crap. And I knew I wanted to lose weight and I didn't know how. Like, I would be like, okay, a salad is healthy, but then I would put like a half of, jar of Hidden Valley Ranch on it, and which isn't even the good ranch. And I just didn't know. And the internet wasn't really a thing. I mean, I got AOL, I think maybe like my senior year or something like that. I don't even remember. I might have even just been in college or right before I went to college. I don't know. I graduated in 2000. So somewhere around that point, and then I was just trolling AOL chat rooms, the flirt snook, because I was also obsessed with I needed to have a boyfriend and felt validated if a boy paid attention to me, and no boys paid attention to me, even though, I was funny and goofy and all of those things, although I was incredibly introverted and shy. That, my friends had boyfriends and I didn't, and I'd go to school dances and ask boys to dance and they said no. So a lot of, complexes over that, I'm not liked because of my body, which my career had some roles in that too. We'll get to that. So leaving high school, I went to college because I wanted to be on the radio. And a little backstory about that is, because I was not the coolest kid on earth, I just loved listening to the radio. And I was just such a freaking dork that I could flip through the radio stations and can tell you which radio station was by the commercials that were playing. That's how much I listened to the radio. And there was a morning show that I totally loved at the time with Stephen DC, and they were out of St. Louis. And I had begged my mom to take me to a carpet store to meet them once and got their autograph. And I just felt like listening to them, I just felt connected to them. I felt like they were my friends, even though I didn't know them. Like, I just felt like I did know them. And so I loved that. I loved that part of it. I mean, I loved listening. I loved feeling like I was a part of something, even though I wasn't. And I would even record the morning show on a cassette whenever the bus would come pick me up. So whenever the 90 minutes were up, when I'd come home from school, I'd fast forward through all the music and the commercials just to hear them talk. So, I mean, that's in the backstory of how, I'm doing a podcast. So, I went to college for radio, and I felt like that just opened something inside of me that I needed to be opened, because I was so shy and introverted. And my first semester, even in college, I was pretty quiet, even though I was on the air. And shout out to Lewis and Clark Community College and WLCA, college radio's best. and 89.9. Didn't sound like that then. And so, by the second semester, it just something clicked in me, and I just loved it so much and became friends with so many people in my class, and just I'm like, it felt so right. Like, even though I was still like bummed about boyfriends and boys and stuff like that in my body, and I wasn't happy, but it did feel like, I can't even describe it. It was just like, this is where I'm supposed to be, sort of feeling. And I got my first radio job at KC95 in St. Louis. And I don't know if I should go into my whole radio backstory. I don't know if this is interesting or not. I'm going to tell you anyway. Why not? Let's get the full story. So I had a class in college, a production class, learning how to make commercials and stuff like that. And we had to do these interview shows, and you could choose it on any topic you want. And there was all these stipulations of what you had to do to learn how to edit audio. And I chose mine on St. Louis radio because it was a dork and I wanted to meet people in St. Louis radio. And so the person that I interviewed and I sent the CD to of like, thank you, I got an A, was Favaz on Keishi, and he emailed me and asked me if I would be interested in a job. And I'm like, I sure am. It's all I've ever wanted to do. Like, even when I was like in 8th grade, I would handwrite letters to radio stations. In St. Louis, I knew I didn't have a chance because it was too big, but like WIBV was a radio station in, at the time, Belleville, Illinois. Now I think it's in Mount Vernon. And just be like, can I just like come hang out? And of course, I never heard anything back. Again, I'm a dork. And so I worked there. And then I got offered my first full-time radio job in Paducah, Kentucky. And I still had a semester left to even get my associates. And my plan was to go on and get my bachelor's. And I wasn't going to go because the money was terrible. I mean, it was $15,000 a year, and it was 3 hours away. And it was the first job I ever like officially applied for, which was part of a class, which was applying for jobs. And I got offered the job. And I'm like, no, I'm already working in radio in St. Louis, and I got to finish college and everything else, which, P.S., by the way, my college was an hour away from my house. So I was commuting 2 hours every day just to go to this community college to use the radio broadcast program. I was working multiple jobs. I was working at Subway, where I got a lot of weight from. Casey's, if you've been to the Midwest, shout out Casey's Pizza. And I was eating a lot of Casey's Pizza. So I was working there to pay for college, pay for a car that wouldn't break down on me so I could commute that much. And then when I got the job in St. Louis, I was commuting over there as this huge triangle of driving, and I was doing 17 credit hours. And then my last semester, I got hired by the college to be the program director for the college radio station. And I was also the production director. Shout out to me for being the first female production director of WLCA, which was a little to do because they didn't want to have a female voice on the alternative station of like the imaging, the things in between the songs it was like college radio's best, 89.9, like those sorts of things in between songs. So I was pretty hyped about that. So I had somebody at the radio station in St. Louis tell me, he's like, hey, if you want to be in this business, you're going to have to get the experience. Like, the schooling doesn't matter. And he's like, if you got enough money to pay the rent and order pizza once a month, you're doing okay. And so I'm like, okay. And I went. And that's where I started. Don't worry, I'm going somewhere with this. I'm not just telling you my radio history. That I did my first like official diet. I did Atkins. Atkins was the thing at the time. And because when I got to Paducah, I didn't know anybody, and no offense to Paducah, but Paducah is not the most exciting place. I was 20 years old, so I wasn't old enough to drink. Of course I wasn't. I was just a little angel. I was never drunk. It wasn't beer that made me fall off of Atkins. So I tried doing Atkins, and the version of Atkins I did was like just straight up eating packages of bologna, which I haven't had bologna in so long. Not that I wouldn't eat bologna now, but damn, I do love some bologna. And I know that it is just like, snouts and buttholes in that thing. Same thing with hot dogs, but it tastes so freaking good. A lot of bologna, a lot of hot dogs. And that's all I could really afford. So that was like and pork rinds, my version kind of Atkins. And that didn't work out so well because what I was eating before that was just literally just ramen. I had would buy those big boxes of the brick of ramen, and I ate a lot of ramen. And then I made friends there, and then I was drinking a ton. So I did Atkins. I didn't really lose any weight. Then I was just freaking gunning for it, pedal to the metal, who cares? From there, I moved to my first morning show job, which was in Champaign, Illinois, on a station that is no longer anything like the station that I was on. It was a classic hit station. So I was 21 years old talking into 38 special. And that's the radio station. I was told not to laugh on the air by my boss, even though I was doing a morning show, because my laugh showed my age. So that's stupid. I mean, oh my God, if we were going to talk about stupid radio stories, that is a whole nother podcast. But there I was working at Subway when I got off the air because I couldn't afford to live otherwise, #radio. And so I would be on the morning show. I actually did live middays at the time too. So I was on the air from 6 a.m. to 2. And then I would work at Subway in the afternoon. And you would think oh, Subway eat fresh. Oh, hell no. Your girl ate a lot of seafood and crab and all meatball sandwiches. And I mean, I just, when you work in food service like that and you have access and you were hey, you're allowed 1 free sub per shift, you dress it up. You know what I mean? I'm not making a veggie sub. So I would say gain a good portion of weight that too. And then that station was sold, and all of us were fired except for one salesperson. And then I took my next radio job, which was in Elmira, New York. And that is where I'd say the first real diet with some real results, I guess. I did LA weight loss. And it was a thing through the radio station where, I got to do the thing for free and talk about it on the air. And I took it so seriously. And I mean, I still take stuff like this super seriously of, if I'm going to promote somebody or talk about something of I want to mean it. And so I took this more seriously than Atkins or, my half-ass salads I did in high school, because I'm talking about this on the radio, and I want to be honest about my experience. And I don't want to say I'm doing a weight loss program and I'm going home and just motoring tubs of cheese balls. So, I was very strict on it, did it to the T. And I've talked about this before, just the weird ass rules of I could have one small little breadstick, the crunchy kind, with a teaspoon of Country Crock. It was just, or 7 wheat thins or 10 grapes or something it was just kind of bonkers. But I lost 60 pounds in 6 months, and I had never done anything like that in my life. And to me, that was just oh my gosh, who is this person? And it's freaking hyped. I was dang, this is the smallest I've ever been. I would say at that point, I'm going from a tight size 24 jean to, at that time, I might have been a 14 or a 16, just to kind of give size some sort of reference. And I must have been a 16 or something, because I remember seeing one of my friends wore a size 12 jean. I'm oh my God, I would kill myself if I was a 12. Are you serious? They're so skinny. And I'm oh my God, I'll never get there. That'll never be me. And so I once I moved to another radio station. I went to Rochester, New York, 98 PXY, the #1 hit music station. And when I moved to Rochester, I didn't do LA weight loss anymore because that was through another radio station. And I didn't want to pay for it because they had you buy bars and all their crap. And so that weight just snap right back. I didn't learn a damn thing from it. I learned that I was barely eating anything. And I learned, I mean, it worked. I lost the weight, but was it any sort of realistic to me on my own? Did I know anything about nutrition or how to eat a balanced meal or what I should be eating? No, I didn't learn any of that. And, I think that me and all the diets I've been on plays in such a role of where I am now and why this process has completely changed my life. And so, I mean, I gained a good portion of that weight back. I mean, I would say almost all of it back. And then I got married in 2009 and I wanted to lose weight before the wedding. And I remember even just looking in the mirror being like, all I want for my wedding is just not to have a double chin. Like, I don't want to have a double chin. That's all I'm asking for. And then I did South Beach, and I did if you've ever done South Beach, the 2 weeks at the beginning where you're only supposed to eat like green vegetables and like lean meat. And I think like lean or reduced fat cheese or something. I don't remember the exact rules. I did that for like a month instead of like the 2 weeks. And yeah, I just like pretty much for 4 months, eliminated all carbs out of my diet. And I had a gym membership, but I didn't really go. Again, me in the gym and exercise for most of my life, not my jam. Again, we're going to get to it, but I work in a gym now. Dude, life is wild. And so it's like and even when I did show up, it was like get on the elliptical for like 15 minutes to say I showed up and then dip. So exercise wasn't even really a big part of that process. I was walking, but I wasn't walking, like a ton or anything. But I lost, 30 or 40 pounds, somewhere around there in that time before my wedding. And then as soon as the wedding was over, it's like, yo, we got no wedding to work for. It's time for cake. And so then that all weight came back. I shortly after that moved to Denver for, another slew of radio jobs that we won't even go into. I had multiple radio jobs while I was in Denver. And that is where I would say that I hit the lowest point for me. I mean, all of the weight and then some from the beginning came back through all of those diet. Oh, I forgot to mention that I had done Weight Watchers a couple times in there, but it was like old school Weight Watchers. And I got so stressed over the points that I gained weight every time I did Weight Watchers. So nothing against Weight Watchers, but at least for me in that time space, and I showed up to the meetings and everything. And I personally didn't find the meetings that helpful at the time in the ones that I went to, which is another reason I try to build some of those things out or do stuff with my podcast to kind of I love that community vibe. And like, hey, we're all here. We're all going through this together. Let's talk about it and let's be real about it because we can feel what this is. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things, if you've never had these struggles, like it's so hard to understand or just how it feels it feels like if people that don't get it are just like, yeah, just like, knock the brownie out of your hand and just, move more and eat less. It's like, it is so much more beyond that. I mean, obviously, yes, caloric deficit is weight loss. Yeah, the science. Okay, cool. We got it. But the storm that surrounds that fact is just, it's different for everyone. And it's a lot to untangle and it's a lot to figure out. And then when you feel shamed by, oh, well, you just can't figure it out. Like, well, have you lived through this? No, you haven't. I don't know. I could go on about that stuff forever, but I felt like at a point too, where I think there was a while where I would pack really healthy foods to work because I was like, hey, I'm dieting, but then I'd go home and eat like a trash can. And so not even like not lose weight, but gain weight. And I can't even imagine what coworkers were thinking at the time. I'm sure they talk shit that was like, oh, Amanda's like thinking she's all healthy and she's in here eating grape tomatoes with breakfast, but why isn't she losing any weight? You know how people are. People are like that. Some people are like that. But in Denver, I had some, not a very pleasant career experience. And from that, I think that just kind of spiraled me out of like, what am I doing with my life? I'm having a nice little crisis here of like, is this what the hell? And it was a lot of eating and it was a lot of binge drinking too and going out with friends at the time. And like the binge eating, I would not have labeled it binge eating at the time. I know that now, and I mostly know that because of this podcast. From me kind of just going through my own discussions and self-discovery. But I was just so unhappy, and it just felt like food was the only thing that gave me any sort of relief. In a way that I feel like going in a binge kind of feels like relief from the pain of life sometimes, if that makes sense. If you've ever gone into some really like binge eating disorder territory, which I've done podcasts about that before, between like what's, just an actually binge eating disorder, which is, I think, eating to the point of pain multiple days in a row, like consistently. I can't remember the exact definition, but that's definitely what I was doing. Like, I would be at work and hating life and could not wait till I could get out of there so I could either hit up multiple drive-thrus at once. So I'd hit up Wendy's and Taco Bell and McDonald's, or, I'd usually just hit 2 in a row of like, well, I want Taco Bell, but I also want some McDonald's fries. So let me hit up both. And then there are, of course, some to eat in the car too. Or just go to the store and go ham on just anything. And I would come home because my husband was at work at the time, and I knew I had this window where no one was home. And then it was just like, again, it just felt like the relief. And but there's so much shame and horribleness around it too. It's like you hate yourself at the same time. I mean, it sucks. And it's not like I enjoyed any of the process, but I did really look forward to getting the food and then starting to eat it. But then it get to the point where I was full, and it's like, keep going. Can't have any evidence. Clean plate club. Oh, and see, there's going to be things that I'm going to remember randomly as I hear this too, where I have been like by family members paddled before for not cleaning my plate. So there's some like food issues there too, of like, if you don't clean your plate, you're going to get paddled. And so, yeah, it's like, which is I have some weird hangups with food waste too. And so probably a lot because of that. And so it was, you got to get rid of this. You paid for it, eat it all, got to have no evidence, and just eat to the point of pain, and so lazy that I didn't want to take the trash out outside, that I had a bag that I kept underneath the kitchen sink that was kind of disguised by, the bags full of other bags. And that's where I would hide my trash until it would get too full. And then I would, secretly run it out to the dumpster. So no one would ever know that I was just eating so freaking much. And, one of the times that I can remember clearly is I ordered 2 large pizzas for myself. And when the pizza guy came, I acted like there was like other people there, like, oh, thanks. Hey guys, pizza's here. And like, this dude cares. And then just motoring these pizzas, and I was so full and so much pain. And I'm like, just keep going. And then, even towards the end of just don't eat the crust then. You can throw that away. You don't have to feel bad about that. And then I did actually go down 3 flights of stairs to throw pizza boxes into the trash because those I couldn't hide under the sink. So it's stuff like that. And again, I was living in Denver, which is such a beautiful place, and growing up in a small town in Illinois, it's just so different. And I'm like, here I am in this place. There's mountains. I live in a cool neighborhood. If you have any ties to Denver, I lived in Capitol Hill. And I'm like, I don't even go for walks. I don't even like hike. I don't like enjoy this. I'm like, I like that stuff. I think that stuff's cool. But in my head, it was like, that's not for you. That's not for people like you. That's not for fat girls. And side note too, because I'm going to remember things as I'm talking here, of like, even as a kid, I wouldn't do things like, even in the middle of the summer, I wouldn't walk to the ice cream shop and get ice cream for myself because I was so afraid that I'd go in there and either kids my age or adults or anything would be like, well, of course Amanda's in here getting ice cream, fatty. Like, that's in my head of that judgment. And also I wouldn't wear nail polish or cute clothes because I'm like, or, cute purses or anything like that, or wear makeup because I'm like, that's what pretty girls get to do. And I'm not a pretty girl. And that's how I thought about myself for a real long time. I wore men's clothes a lot in high school, a lot of big baggy Old Navy t-shirts, big baggy jeans, which was kind of the look in the late 90s. So it wasn't too out of place, I guess. But yeah, it was just like, there's just a lifetime of like, oh, you can't go hiking, like even though you want to. That's not for people like you. Oh, you want ice cream and you want to wear cute clothes? No, too fat to do that. And this is all messaging swirling in my own head. And it's terrible. It's just like you're living in your own prison and your body is your prison. It sucks. And so I'm like, I bet I want to do these things and I only have this one life. And this is not the life I want to live, that I'm binge drinking with my friends and I'm binge eating by myself. And this is, at the time I was 29 and I'm like, I'm going to turn 30. I'm like, is this who I want to be? Is this me? This doesn't feel like me. It doesn't feel like me at all. And not to, that's where, I've had people be like, oh, well, just be happy in your own body and be happy with your skin. You don't need to lose weight. And yeah, if you are happy in your own body, I agree with that. I mean, I want people to be healthy or whatever, but if you are like, damn, I'm looking good and you are into yourself and you are confident and you just love your body and you're rocking life, hell yeah, do your thing at any size. 1000% down for that. But that is not how I felt. It just felt like this. I don't know. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel comfortable in my own body. And again, I had so much hate and shame for my own body. So I'm like, you know what? Something's got to change. And the only person's going to change it is me. And I've tried all these diets and they don't work, because if they worked, the weight would have stayed off. I would have learned something. I didn't feel like I learned anything. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to move forward and make the best decision possible in every moment, which has been my mantra since New Year's 2012. And it just happened to be New Year's. It happened to be a thing on the radio show I was on at the time, where I was on KYGO in Denver with my friends Kelly and Ryder. And which is funny because now I'm Kelly, who I did the morning show with in Denver. She's on the radio in New York City, and I'm her cat's personal trainer on the radio. So it's, again, it's weird how life works. But we all talked because it's radio and you're talking about like New Year's resolutions. And I read some article that said it's better to do in smaller bites, to have smaller goals, right? Which is also part of my mantra. So I'm like, let's do a 90-day thing. Let's just choose 3 things that we want to do in those 90 days. And let's see, kind of challenge each other to see if we can do them. And I don't remember what all 3 of mine was, but one was I wanted to lose 15 pounds in 3 months, which I felt was reasonable. And I wanted to start flossing every day. And I don't remember the other one because obviously I didn't stick to that one, but I still floss every day. And I lost more than 15 pounds, which is cool. And so from there, like just having I'm not restricting myself. I'm not eating these 6 grapes at a time. I'm not counting points, even though I count calories and macros now. Again, we're going to get to where I am now versus the beginning. It was just make a better choice. Like just do something, like drink some water. At the time I was chugging Red Bulls like it was out of style. And God, I still love Red Bull. I allow myself like 1 or 2 Red Bulls a year, mostly because I can't control myself with it. I just love it so freaking much. And I was a big soda drinker. Drank a lot of Dr. Pepper. I used to at one point in time drink a couple cans of Coke for breakfast every day during my morning show because I didn't plan anything. I didn't bring breakfast. So I'd go to the vending machine and get a couple cans of Coke, and that was my breakfast every morning. And so I'm like, you know what? I can't control myself around the Red Bull. I can't really control myself around the soda. And I definitely can't control myself around fast food. And what I told myself then was like, these things don't have to be gone forever. Because again, we're making the best decision possible. We're not restricting ourselves. But I'm like, but right now, where I'm at in my own head, I can't handle that. Like if I go to McDonald's, I'm not interested in making a super healthy choice. If I'm going to McDonald's, I want French fries. So I'm like, okay, so I'm not going to have fast food. I'm going to cut soda out. Both of those things, really no redeeming qualities other than they're convenient. You know what I mean? I mean, they taste good, but you don't really need them. And I'm like, for the Red Bull, I'm like, let's switch to coffee and, try to get to black coffee, because when I did have coffee, it was like creamer, sugar, coffee. And so those were the kind of the bigger decisions that I made. And yeah, I'm like, I know that I need to eat more vegetables. I need to drink water, and let's just make some baby steps. So I did cut out the Dr. Peppers, the Red Bulls, and the fast food. And I started with the coffee. I started getting iced mochas. I like an iced coffee. So, full fat iced mocha, bring it. Because in my mind, that is better than drinking 3 tall boys of Red Bull. So that's where I started with the coffee until I got to the point where I went to an iced latte, and then getting into an unsweetened iced latte, and then taking out the milk and just doing a black iced coffee. And that process took me about a year or so to wean myself. Again, baby steps here. It wasn't like I went from I'm going to cut out all caffeine, because I know I needed caffeine. I just needed to change the avenue the caffeine was making it into my face. So I made that change. And at the beginning, I ate a lot of stir fry because it's cheap. You get bags of stir fry veggies, they're like $1, and get some chicken, throw in some chicken. At the time, I was using teriyaki sauce or whatever. I wasn't using the light or anything. I was just like, this makes it taste good. If this makes vegetables taste good, so I want to eat them, then it's going on there right now. Like, that's kind of how I viewed things at the beginning, of just kind of like, I'm going from eating 0 vegetables. I just want to eat vegetables. And sure, is it just steamed broccoli with, nothing on it, which I actually enjoy now. But at the time, I'm like, ugh, God, kill me. But I'm like, put some teriyaki sauce on it and vegetables will happen. And so it was kind of making those sorts of things. I tended to be lower carb at the beginning. Those like tofu noodles, I ate a butt ton of those. So I really liked those, and I would still eat it with ground hamburger and marinara sauce and mushrooms and onions and all the crap that I liked to make, spaghetti with. And I wasn't weighing or measuring anything. It was just, this is better than what I normally do. This is better than eating $30 worth of Taco Bell. You know what I mean? So it wasn't this huge drastic change. It was just like, whatever I have to do to make things just a little bit better, 1% better every day. And from there, I started feeling just taking that fast food out of the equation made me feel a lot better. And I wasn't super obsessive with the weight going down at first. I wanted that 15 pounds that I told myself I would do, but I don't know, it just felt really different. And so when the weight did start coming off, and I'm like, I'm doing this myself. I'm not following Weight Watchers. I'm not following South Beach. I'm not following LA Weight Loss. I'm not following Atkins, or I don't even remember what else I tried. I didn't try the Master Cleanse though. So I will say that I did avoid that one, although a lot of my friends did the Master Cleanse at the time. And so, it was just so empowering, right? Of like, I'm figuring this out somehow. What the hell? I'm losing weight and nobody's telling me what to do. And I'm just making some better choices and feeling good and feeling empowered. I started going for walks, and I really loved walking around my neighborhood. And I started small, and then I got up to a lot. I mean, by the time I got a Fitbit, game was on. I got the Fitbit for Christmas that same year. So I was already down like 60 pounds by the time I got a Fitbit. What I was doing was using Map My Run on my phone, and I would turn that on whenever I would go for a walk. And I started doing Couch to 5K. At the time, I listened to the Chubby Jones podcast, and I used that as my Couch to 5K, and just, slow progression. It was like, I really like walking, and it's like, I feel like I could do a little bit more because I had so much more energy. I'm like, okay, well, let's try running. And then I did interval running, and I could tell you exactly where I was when I ran a mile without stopping for the first time in my life. did not do that as a kid. And I just like stopped and cried in the street. I'm like, I just ran a mile without stopping. I'm 30 years old. And again, I think just some of those things of just trying and doing those little things and setting those goals for yourself. And when you hit them, it's just so empowering of like, what else can I do? And that's how I felt. And that's how I still feel. And that's just, how it really kind of got started. I mean, I wish I would have kept better track of things. I mean, I didn't have Instagram at the time to journal my journey. I didn't have a podcast at the time, although I was listening to podcasts at the time. And yeah, I wish I would have kept better track of those things when people ask me that to put in this podcast. But I mean, those are really the kind of decisions I made. Instead of eating a pint of Ben and Jerry's at night, I would slice up a banana and freeze it and put that in a food processor with some peanut butter and honey and almond milk. And that makes like ice cream, which is the bomb, by the way. And that too, I'm like, is it full of sugars and calories? Yeah, it is. But isn't it better than eating a pint of Ben and Jerry's or more? I think so. And so it was just making those kinds of decisions of finding the foods I liked. I loved making apple nachos for a long time, which they're still delicious. So slicing an apple, which I would do extra thin because, again, the binge tendencies, your girl likes quantity. I like the hand-to-mouth motion, and I'd slice them really thin and drizzle them with peanut butter and honey, and then I'd put some coconut on it and some chocolate chips. Oh, mwah, chef's kiss. So good. Is it loaded with a bunch of sugars and fats? Uh-huh. But it was better than me getting like 3 Nacho Bel Grandes. So didn't feel too bad about it. You know what I mean? It's just sort of things like that where I feel like there's so much shame comes around of like, you think that you're trying to lose weight and you're again thinking that you have to do these like baby bird portions, or it needs to be like quote unquote healthy food. I was just having a conversation at the gym with somebody. They're like, we don't really eat that healthy. And I was asking what they were eating. They're telling me they were eating salmon and asparagus and stuff like that at night. I'm like, do you not see that as healthy? Because that's hella healthy. I was expecting a totally different answer. And so, it's just finding what you like and finding things that you like. Another thing I ate a ton of at the time was cottage cheese with grape nuts on it and then slice some like peaches or strawberries on top. And that was also delicious. So I'm just finding these things that I liked and I enjoyed eating, and I was excited about eating and finding avenues of being excited about eating vegetables and fruits and the things that I had never consumed on my own before. And so from there, I moved to Oregon. So we moved to Oregon at the beginning of 2013. So I was still losing weight. And at that point I was running a ton. So I really enjoyed running. I mostly enjoy when it's over. And then we moved into the mountains of Oregon. So then it was hiking time. And so a lot of hiking. And that's a point where I really started meal prepping. So I didn't meal prep until I moved to Oregon, and I was doing a morning show. And I'm like, I wasn't doing a morning show in 2012. So I didn't have the problem of I'm not prepared for breakfast, grab a couple cans of Coke. So I'm like, okay, I'm on the air and I'm staying at the station till noon, 1 o'clock. I got to eat something. I got to be prepared. And so I started meal prepping, and I started with breakfast and lunches because that's what I took to the radio station with me. And sometimes I had lunch there, sometimes I didn't. So then I really started just cooking food in bulk, and I started doing that because it's just easier for me. Having a plan makes it easier. I don't like opening a fridge or a cabinet and not knowing what's going on, because I will gravitate towards just, the immediate, like, let's eat a whole bag of chips. So I started doing that, and I love seeing pictures of my old meal preps because I have just this hodgepodge of all the crappy Tupperware, and it doesn't have to be fancy. It just like worked for me, and experimenting with different recipes. And that became something really fun for me of, I know how to, make a mean bologna sandwich. Actually, I do know how to like cook super unhealthy foods really well. But I'm like, how can I play around and make healthier versions of things that I really like, that I'm excited about eating? And so then I started, with the meal prepping, experimenting with making recipes, and it was just fun for me. And at that point, then I was like, okay, well, I'm down almost 100 pounds at this point, and weight isn't just flying off you like it does when, for a good rip whenever you're first starting. So I'm like, okay, well, I got to buckle down then. Let's try counting calories. And I had done that in the past, and it stresses me out, but it was because I was never prepared for it. If you told me now that I wasn't meal prepped, and you're like, hey, Amanda, today you got to eat 1,600 calories. I don't know, today I have such a better gauge on it. That's not fair. But 1,600 calories, make it work. And then I'm trying to figure that out in the moment during the day. Oh my God, it would stress me out. And then I wouldn't eat anything all day. And then I would power eat at night, which is what I do with Weight Watchers. I didn't want to use up all my points. So I just eat like a bird all day. And then at night, well, I'm like, well, I got 20 points to eat. Well, I'll shovel it in. And so that was my relationship with counting calories, or just counting anything, macros, points, whatever. At the time, I didn't know anything about macros. And so I started to have a better relationship with that because I was prepping, and I could think of, this is what I'm going to eat the next day. And this is, kind of figuring things out from there. So, I was a year and a half in before I counted any calories or anything like that, just because I'm like, how do I take this to a new level? I'm feeling awesome. What else can I do? And I ran my first half marathon in 2014 for St. Jude, which was super amazing. So I flew into Nashville to run the Rock and Roll Nashville race. And yeah, it was just a lot of hiking, a lot of cardio. I was not going to the gym. I did try CrossFit for a minute, and I hated it. Which is nothing against just CrossFit in general, I guess, although... Well, we won't go into that conversation, but if you love CrossFit, that's awesome, as long as it works for you and you're not getting hurt. But where I was at, it was just my thumbs went numb for a couple of days because my form was so terrible and nobody was correcting me, and I didn't know what to do. And it was just brutal. And where they're like, I'm like, I'm going to puke. And they're like, I already puked today. Go ahead and puke. I'm like, I don't want to puke. That to me didn't make fitness fun. So outside of that, it was just a lot of cardio. And then when I moved to Cincinnati in 2015, I got my skin removal surgery in June of 2015. So I wasn't here that long. And that was something that was also eye-opening for me because that was something that came up through the radio station. It's not something that I was really actively searching out at the time. It wasn't like I was saving up for it or anything for that specifically. And then the conversation came up at the radio station of that being a possibility. And I'm like, sure. So then I shopped around to surgeons around town. And one of the quotes that one of the doctors told me kind of haunts me, which is, you're wearing a coat of your own bad decisions. I'm like, oh God, which I don't really see it that way. But one of the things that was eye-opening was that I had all of this loose skin hanging off of specifically my abdomen. I still have loose skin on my arms, not as much on my arms. I do have a lot of loose skin on my thighs, but I didn't see it as just loose skin up until I talked to a surgeon. I saw it as, this is weight you're not working hard enough to lose. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, you're just, oh, why can't you just lose these last pounds? Whatever. Until I met, these surgeons, and they're like, no, that's not going away. That is your loose skin. And I'm like, oh. And I don't know why that didn't click with me. And again, it's not that I was unhappy in my body. I felt great. I was running. I was down over 100 pounds. I felt so, again, I already felt like a different person. And so, I just didn't see it that way, which if anybody is listening to this and you're still hating on your body, even though you're losing weight because it looks a certain way, appreciate that body. It is doing so many amazing things for you. The human body is incredible. And it might just be loose skin where you're telling yourself you're not losing enough weight or you're still too fat or whatever. It's loose skin is going to happen. And I would never tell anybody to not lose weight or be healthier because of loose skin. If I wouldn't have had the skin removal surgery, I would absolutely take all of that loose skin and put it right back on my body right now versus put all my weight back and to be where I was before I started making healthier choices. But I did have that skin removal surgery in 2015. And at the point where I was able to start working out again, I just went for walks again. And then that was beginning of 2016 is when I went to the gym. I went to a gym here in Cincinnati called Fit Next. And that's really my first kind of real gym experience where I went in all the time and I really loved it and really like lifting weights and then really seeing what a difference that kind of made in my body outside of surgery. And it was just so incredible. I mean, if I could go back and do it again, I mean, I would waver on saying would I do things differently, because I think that everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. And there's so many lessons that I've learned because of what I did, but definitely add in strength training sooner. I mean, the weight doesn't come off as fast because you're gaining muscle, especially if you've never lifted weights. You're going to be putting on some newbie muscle and the scale is not going to show, but your body composition will. So I think that I definitely would have really not had so much fear around a gym and try to do some weightlifting sooner. So, I mean, I wasn't lifting weights until 2016 and I started January of 2012. So that's where I was at with that, and then fell in love with that process. And yeah, I've just kind of been doing like my meal prep. I still meal prep every Sunday. I love going for walks whenever I'm able to. I love lifting weights. And it's just, again, like, it's just so, I can't even describe, like, life-changing, of just like the way that I feel about myself now versus then, of how much I hated myself. And just, I felt like I was so much angrier as a person, and I had so many more temper tantrums and just a lot more negative outlook on everything. And just how much that changed, again, just not the weight on my body, but I guess the weight on my mind. Of it, just, I couldn't have imagined at the time that this is what a healthier lifestyle could do for you. And I mean, it got to the point where, I mean, I really believe that I got the job I did in Cincinnati on the radio because I was so much more confident in myself and such a different person that I could be this person that could be in front of a camera. I hid from cameras for most of my life. I didn't want my picture taken. I'm going to be on video. Nobody look at me. You know, it was nice being in radio for a long time because nobody did look at you because you're on the radio, which also, side note, plays into some, I was just having this conversation the other day about being on the radio and people not knowing what you look like, which has kind of changed now because of social media. But how many times people loved me on the radio and thought I was so funny, or I entertained them, which I love that so much, of just bringing some brightness into somebody's day, or, you know, having them laugh, and then meeting them and just looking at the look of disappointment on their face when they saw what I looked like versus what they imagined I would look like. And you could just tell that you could feel them losing interest. And stuff like that is really heartbreaking, of just as part of my own personal journey of, like, people like you as a person until they see you. And once they see that you're in a larger body, or they find an unattractive body, all of a sudden your personality's not as good anymore. Like, that's jacked up. And that's really hurtful. And I'm carrying some of that baggage around with me still, of, you know, it sucks. Then it's really easy to tell yourself the narrative of, like, you know, people don't like you unless you look a certain way, which I don't think is absolutely true, because really just those people can F off. So I feel like that stuff didn't matter to me once I felt good about myself and I started loving myself more. Like, I wasn't so worried about people seeing what I look like. It was just like, well, I like me. So if you don't like me, then quit looking at it. And having more of that attitude, just really bled into every area of my life, especially my career. It just made me better on the radio. It made me better in front of a camera, social media. I put myself out there. I did more fun stuff, like summiting mountains and meeting some of my best friends because I was a PCT volunteer, and doing these runs, and just like some of the stuff that I got into because my body and how I looked in the world wasn't holding me back in my own mind of, I can't do those things. Again, I can't be this weird person or this silly person on a camera, because people are going to be like, what's the fat girl doing that for? You know what I mean? Or just like, she's too ugly, or And that was just so bore into my brain that to have that just kind of let go. And again, not just because the scale said something different, it was because I felt different about me. I was making these changes. I was sticking to it. This is me. This is empowering. Holy shit, I'm doing this, and I'm feeling great, and I'm feeling more empowered every day. And I think that was such a huge part of it. And at the same time, there's a lot of loneliness in that, which is why I started this podcast, because when you feel like you're alone and you don't have a workout buddy, you don't have a personal trainer, you don't have a coach, you don't have anybody, and you're just kind of figuring it out on your own, it's really hard. It can be really lonely, which is one of the reasons I started this podcast. But so, yeah, it just changed me so much. And I don't know, it's really incredible. And then at the point where, somebody at the radio station, one of my bosses, was like, hey, you should start a blog talking about your weight loss because people like to hear when you talk about it. And, it's kind of hard to do on the radio, of being like, hey, I really wanted to binge eat. I had a whole tub of cheese balls last night. Here's Luke Bryan. You know what I mean? So I wrote this blog, and it went better than I expected. And then I asked if I could have a podcast, because I wasn't allowed to have one on my own per my contract. And so I started this podcast, which was started as Wait a Minute, and the name changed a few months in and became Pound This. And I'd say that not only my journey, but just starting this podcast has changed my life immensely, of being able to dive into these things that I felt so much shame around, like binge eating. Like, you just heard me talk about that like it's nothing, right? Like, it's just like, oh, she just casually talks about binge eating. That was never a thing for me. I never sat down and talked to anybody in my close personal life, nothing about that at all. The first time I literally talked about that was on this podcast, because I felt like that's got to be something else other people are experiencing. And I wish I could have heard somebody talk about that. I wish somebody would have given me resources for that. That would have been nice. That probably would have saved me a lot of years of heartbreak. And so kind of opening those things up and learning about myself, of even having the guest on that explained that I had binge eating disorder with what I was doing. I'm like, I didn't put that together for some reason. I just thought like I just really loved food. I didn't put that together. And so, and just the amazing people I've met on this podcast, and how much information I've learned, and I hope that you've learned. It's just, I was just like, I love this so much. Like, I know that my life has completely changed. My attitude on life, just how I feel about things, how I feel about myself. Not that it's not a struggle. My God, I'll tell you all day too, the parts that suck still. But to answer the question where somebody asked me that I brought up earlier of, how do you not give up? And I can't even imagine giving up now. I can't imagine going back to that old life of, it's just, again, when it becomes a lifestyle, like I just love living a healthier life. I love the way I feel physically. I love the way I feel mentally. I love that by being in this body and mindset, I'm able to help other people that had similar struggles to mine. It's like, I can't ever think about going back to just eating fast food and drinking Dr. Peppers all day and doing nothing. Like, it just seems like such a foreign world to me now that I'm like, not to say that I don't slip or gain some weight back or things get hard. I mean, that's just life. Life's a roller coaster, man. There's ups and downs. But yeah, to just be like, I give up. I'm not going to do this anymore. I don't think that's an option. I mean, I really never had that thought cross my mind until I was asked that on Instagram of just like giving this up. And obviously so much that I'm so passionate about learning about this, knowing more about nutrition, knowing more about, exercise. Once I met Josh at Cincy 360 and I was having some knee problems and, he was going to help me out, and I'd never had a one-on-one personal trainer before. I'm like, yes, please show me form. And I'm lifting at the Y, but I don't really know what the hell I'm doing. I think I do, but I don't know. And just kind of like, I just want to learn it all just because I love it, to the point where I chose not to renew my contract at the radio station and pursue a career in health and fitness. At the time, I didn't think I was going to be able to take this podcast with me, which was a mega bummer. But it obviously worked out. And that wasn't an easy process either. But, being able to be there and have this podcast, and, now I am a personal trainer in person at Cincy 360 Fitness. And I mean, last year I got 4 certifications. I certified personal trainer, certified nutritionist or nutrition coach. I'm certified behavior change specialist and weight loss specialist. So like just learning and being able to help others in more and more ways of making this my job. I'm like, I have to sit down a lot and be like, yo, have some perspective. The person that dreaded going to a gym, dreaded it, avoided it for a long time, was such a place of hurt and shame. That's where I work now. Like, oh my God. At most points in my life, you've been like, you're going to quit radio and become a personal trainer, and you're going to be a health coach, and you're going to be a full-time podcaster. I'd be like, dude, you're smoking crack. There's no way. You are high. And so it's just changed me so much. And not that everybody's journey goes through that you're going to quit your job and get a job in health and fitness, but I guarantee you it's going to change you in ways that you never imagined. Just how you feel about yourself, how you show up in the world, your attitude towards things. And I think when it starts is just, I want to lose weight. I want to look good in these jeans. I mean, obviously those are all some mile markers and goals to have, but it's the things that are so much worthy is just being like, I did this, I accomplished this goal. And that's why I love small goals so much, of just because it's nice to be like, I did that. Yeah. I said I was going to hit 10,000 steps a day every day, and I did that. I'm a badass. Doesn't have to be anything big, anything major. Like, hey, I chose a water over a Dr. Pepper today. That's pretty badass of me. I wouldn't have done that before. What else can I do? Those sorts of things I feel like are the drivers. And knowing, really sitting down and talking to yourself through things like, why do I make these food decisions? Or why do I make these exercise decisions? Where's my head at? Like, really tune in, instead of just kind of putting it on autopilot and thinking about just before, you want to eat something. Is this the best decision? Is this going to fuel me in all the ways I want it to? And even sometimes it's not. I'll be like, well, no, this cheesecake is not really going to do anything, I guess, physically for me, but mentally it's going to make me feel freaking awesome for a minute. And then that's up to you to be like, is this the right decision right now? Am I going to eat some cheesecake? Is it a good time, or is it not the best time? What's my relationship with this? And I think that's one of the hardest things that has to become habit of talking to yourself through these situations and putting some thought behind it, some mindfulness behind it, and mindfulness and consistency, and just sticking to it, because knowing that if you stick to it, things are going to happen. They're definitely not going to happen on your timeline. And I'm the most impatient person too. And so, I mean, it took me 2.5 years to ultimately lose most of the weight that I lost, where before I was like, oh, I lost 60 pounds in 6 months. Like that's the that's a timeline I'm looking for. Right. But then it just came right back. And then it's brutal when you got to lose the weight that you've already lost before or multiple times before. And I don't want to live that again. at least not to that level of, I can't imagine. I mean, it could happen. I'm not going to say never. I don't know what the hell's going to happen, but gaining over 100 pounds back and then having to lose that again. Oof. I'm not really interested in doing that. Not to say that I wouldn't. That wouldn't be fun. Not fun at all. So it's easier to stay consistent in finding motivation through that and habit building than to do this slide down the mountain, climb it back up again, slide down the mountain, climb it back up again, of finding the better route. You know what I mean? And if you ask for help for that, then do it. Hire a health coach, hire a nutritionist, hire a dietitian, hire a personal trainer, any of those things. Get some best friends along, people that are really serious about it. And I mean, relationships are going to get all messed up during this whole process too. And just being prepared of like, but are you going to choose you? I mean, I've lost friendships from losing weight. That's another topic for another time. I've discussed that before in this podcast, but I'm always going to be with me. So sorry that didn't work out. It's heartbreaking. It sucks to lose friends, but ultimately I got to choose me. And if they're not happy with me choosing me, that's a sign. So yeah, God, this is a long podcast. I really didn't think I was going to talk this long. Jeez, I need to start doing some shorter episodes. But yeah, so that's, I mean, the most part. I'm sure I'm missing lots of details here and there and whatever of how my weight loss journey just completely changed my life. And I'm sitting here recording this podcast, and I had a client at the gym this morning, and I have clients at the gym this afternoon, and I chat with clients that I'm working with virtually, and it's like amazing. It's just, I mean, it's a lot of work, and I will say that in the process I'm in now, it is really overwhelming, and it's a lot to learn. It's a lot to learn from going from being on the radio and, telling fart jokes on the radio all day to learning how to be a personal trainer when human anatomy is not my strong suit. Math and science, not so much. But yeah, it's a difficult process, but that's what makes it worth it. The weight loss process was difficult too. There's days I definitely cried on the floor and I screamed and hated it. But I stayed the course, and that's what makes you appreciate it so much, is grinding through those times. Because again, everything is just comes in waves. It's a roller coaster, and going through those rough times and sticking through it, building those habits, staying consistent is going to bring you back up again. And you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't give up this time. And if you are looking for more habit making, Atomic Habits by James Clear is a really great book, because so much of this is habit and consistency, mindset. There's just a lot to it. So that's most of my story. As always, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. And if you ever have any questions for me, please email me, amanda@amandavalentinebites.com. You can always find me on Instagram, shoot me a DM at You Can Pound This. And if you're interested in in-person personal training, if you are in Cincinnati, you can email info@cincy360fitness.com. I think that's it. My God. But yes, thank you so much for listening. If you find any value in this or any episode you listen to, please share this social media with your friends. That would be amazing. If you could write a review and rate it, specifically on Apple Podcasts, that would be just so incredibly helpful. But really, if you find an episode or an interview guest that you find helpful, please share. Or if you have a suggestion for somebody you would like to hear, let me know. Or a topic you would like covered, please let me know. But that's it for now. Later.
AmandaValentineBites.com